Hello, welcome again to Fair Tax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
And we are the Fair Tax Guys.
Guys.
Again, still fighting for truth, justice, and the American way to get rid of the un-American income tax.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it truly is un-American. I mean, the founders and the framers of the Constitution would be appalled by today's income tax and what it does and the power that the IRS has assumed and that Congress has given it. All right. Bad idea all around.
Can you imagine what Thomas Jefferson would think if he knew that people had to disclose to the government how much money they make, where they got it, how much they give to their church, how many kids they've got, just how much did you spend on daycare, how much did you spend on medical expense? None of the government's business. And with a fair tax, it is none of the government's business.
And you're right. Thomas Jefferson would be very upset with all of that.
He would not like that at all. But I'll tell you what, we have got a lot to cover here in this edition of Fair Tax Power Radio, and we will start with our daily, our weekly, our bi-weekly venture into Congress.gov.
Oh yeah, you got some good ones there, don't you?
There's some good ones in here, but I'm going to have to cull it down to the best of the best because we got so much other things to get into. But now you are a retired educator.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah.
Then you will be interested in this one. This is S4314, a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to address the teacher and school leader shortage in early childhood, elementary, and secondary education. I guess that's your high school chemistry, and for other purposes. So you're going, I don't know, because this is just introduced yesterday. They don't have the text here, so we can't look at it. But how are you going to use the tax code to address a teacher shortage?
Yeah,
other than give teachers a tax break just for being teachers?
And right now, teachers are getting a lot of criticism because they're not in school. They're doing online stuff, okay, but they're not in school. And some of the teachers' unions are saying, oh, we can't go back in the fall, but we still want to get paid.
Yeah, we can't go back until the police are defunded, is what one big union is saying.
Yeah, as a 25-year educator,
that's not our fight. We're not going to get into there. But that's just.
And why do we need the tax code to address those issues? All right, there are other ways to attract people to education. All right, that was a big deal when I was in education, and it's a big deal now.
Yeah, pay them what it's worth.
Yeah. I mean, I know from my 25 years, teachers work very hard. I mean, the vast majority of teachers work very hard, and they're very concerned about their students.
And teachers are more valuable to society than somebody that can hit a jump shot. I'm sorry, that's just the truth. Okay, let's move on here. H.R. 7721 to amend the Internal Revenue Code to allow a refundable credit against tax for farmers who hire unemployed workers.
Wait a minute. They're going to hire unemployed workers?
I thought that's one of the things that you have to be before you can be hired to begin with.
Yeah.
I guess if you're changing jobs, if somebody wants to change jobs and work for Farmer B instead of Farmer A.
Yeah, but again, and even if that's the case, Bob, all right, that is Congress meddling in the private sector, okay? Let farmers hire who they think is, the best person for the job.
And it's also Congress trying to keep people locked into jobs that they've got. Because if you're a farmer and you're going to get a tax credit for hiring an unemployed worker versus somebody who works on the next farm and wants to come over to work for you, you'll take the guy that's unemployed to get the tax credit, so the guy at the next farm is stuck where he is.
It's more meddling by Congress, and it's not good.
Okay, I got one more thing. This is actually a House resolution. Resolution 1053, and it's rather lengthy. I'm only going to go to the last line where it says, and to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to modernize and improve the Internal Revenue Service.
Oh, right. Yeah.
How about we amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to exterminate and get rid of the Internal Revenue Service?
That's what I was going to say. I know a way to make the IRS perfect. Eliminate it.
Yeah, get rid of it. Gone.
And that's what the fair tax does, my friends. Okay.
That it does. Oh, I tell you, we got to move along to several different things today. And this is one. This is we get some really good feedback from people, and let's see, where did I find that? Oh well, I have to do it off memory. I don't remember the guy's name. I think it was Jeff. He sent us saying, isn't it true that proceeds from crime and panhandling are immune to the income tax.
And no, it's not. And I did send him a response. No,
you got his name there?
Any form of income, I didn't print it out, but
I want to give him credit, but now I can't find where it is. But he says, panhandling and crime is those proceeds are not subject to income taxation.
I believe it's Jeff Martin.
Okay. Well, anyway, I apologize if we got that wrong. That's one of those cases where the letter of the law says one thing and practical reality says another thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Proceeds from criminal activity and from panhandling are indeed reportable as income under the Internal Revenue Code. But how in the world is that going to be enforced? I just can't see somebody filing on their 1040 and say, well, I sold some heroin, I robbed a couple of banks, and my girlfriend turned a few tricks, we made all this illegal money, and now we're going to pay taxes on it. What's the probability of that going to happen? Or
I was down on the corner of 42nd and Broadway panhandling down there, and I made this much. Technically it is taxable, but try and get it. And that brings out a serious problem with the current tax code, and that's evasion.
That's part of the billion-dollar tax gap that we've got. Multiple billion-dollar tax gap.
It's approaching $1 trillion a year. Evasion is a huge problem. 1 in 5 people are not paying the income tax. And evasion with a sales tax is minimal. It's tiny, because how do you avoid a sales tax? You can't go into a big box store and buy a toaster oven and try to get out of paying the taxes. It's not going to happen.
Okay, I found it. That is Jeff Martin was the guy that asked that question. So I want to give proper credit to
so thanks for that, Jeff, because it brings out, it gives us an opportunity to talk about evasion, which is another of the many huge problems with the current income tax system that would be solved with the fair tax.
Okay.
All
right. We've got something new. Oh, you got another comment you want to throw in here?
Yeah, this is a quick one. Thanks, guys. I just got it yesterday. Fair tax books are fun to read. As you said, don't forget about the audio books. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Along with the white book, which was the first book, the fair tax book by Bortz and Linder, came out in 2005, and then the red book there, the fair tax book Answering the Critics, also by Bortz and Linder, 3 years later in 2008. All right, they have audio books. So I have given books and audiobooks away for a good while now. It would be what I want most for our country before I croak.
Well, that's pretty straightforward, isn't
it? I want to do this for my grandchildren, and my grandchildren keep getting older, and they're getting employed, and they're getting married. So, time's running out here.
Okay. Now, you remember a while back, we ran a little contest to find appropriate slogans for the IRS. Things like, we're the IRS, we have what it takes to take what you have. I like that. That's really good.
Yep.
But we've got another little contest we're going to work on. It's along the same similar lines, but it was inspired by a cartoon that we found.
Yep.
And for those who are listening in an audio-only format here, let me kind of read this for you. But it shows 2 people sitting in a car, and the cartoon says, if the IRS made a GPS system. And the GPS is talking to the drivers. They're sitting there with these really puzzled looks on their face. It says, proceed to the intersection following Schedule C, Section 4 through 6. Then turn right if the number of passengers in your vehicle, Form B22, is greater than the number of cup holders, line 15, currently in use, and on and on and on. That's what would happen if the IRS made GPS systems. So we want to expand that a little bit. If the IRS made, then fill in the blank. Make anything you want to. And if you want to make a meme, if you want to make a cartoon, if you want to make, anything like that.
Well, just text entries are fine, because we don't expect everybody to become a graphic artist overnight.
Just think of, if the IRS made, think of a product or something that what it would look like. I've seen another meme somewhere on the thing that shows a car that's kind of all cattywampus. The front end is pointing one end, the back end is pointing the other way, and it's got wheels on it in all directions. So if the IRS made cars, that would be it. Only thing we would ask: do not use images that are subject to copyright. Okay,
Yeah.
don't get us in any copyright issues.
And where do they send them?
They send them to the fairtaxguys@gmail.com, and we have got a huge stash of stuff. The Fair Tax Logo store is undergoing a revision. They're having to change a lot of their inventory around. So we have got a lot of stuff that we can give out. We might even be able to give out a first, second, and third prize. We've got more than enough stuff to do that.
Yes, because we need to peddle that stuff so that
the winner of our If the IRS Made Whatever kind of contest, send your entries to the fairtaxguys@gmail.com.
Here's an example I thought of. So,
okay.
Now if the IRS made toaster ovens, you'd need a PhD to fix your breakfast in the morning.
That's
Something
true.
like that.
What would the toaster oven look like, though? You'd have one drawer facing this way and another drawer facing up, and the heating element on the outside someplace. It'd be just if you're artistic and can draw your own cartoon, that would be wonderful. But think of a product, what it would look like if the IRS made it.
Yeah. And I can just picture like 4 or 5 congressmen huddled around the toaster oven trying to get it to work. Anyways,
yes.
Okay. So that's our new Fair Tax Power Radio contest, and enjoy that.
Now we have got we had this is called being flexible.
Oh yeah.
We try to plan out ahead kind of what the subjects and topics we're going to cover here during Fair Tax Power Radio.
Let me just do very quickly reference.
Okay, real quick.
Yeah. Okay. We always encourage you to join fairtax.org or go to fairtax.org and sign up, okay? You can do it with no money, but we encourage you to send them some money because they do have expenses. And one of the expenses was in this week's Grassroots Corner with Jim Bennett, okay? And he's talking about if you're holding setting up an information booth at some event, whether it's indoors or outdoors and so forth, sometimes the people who put it on require insurance. Fairtax.org, the AFFT has that. So if you're going to set something up, you contact Jim at jim.bennett@fairtax.org. And you can read all about it in this week's Grassroots Corner. And you can read Steve Hayes' chairman's report, which is about...
This is about the Supreme Court's non-decisions on the Trump tax returns.
Yeah.
They just kicked it back down to the lower courts. And again, we're not going to repeat word for word what these different articles say, since you can sign up and get them yourself.
Yep.
But that is interesting. Even if the event doesn't require it, it's a good idea to have liability insurance.
And it will cost you nothing.
Yeah.
Because AFFT is already paying for it.
It does not cost the volunteer anything that wants to set up a table. And all it takes is one person walking by your table, slipping and falling, and I'm going to get you.
And that's it.
It's just always a good idea to do that. And so if you can have it at no cost, why not? Only thing is that you have to let Jim know about your event ahead of time.
Yeah.
You can't do it on the day of because
he has to forward the insurance company.
He has to forward information to his insurance agent and all.
Yeah.
But you can get insurance coverage at no cost to you if you're going to be representing the Fair Tax at a public event. Good idea to do that.
Yep.
Now, so I started to say we had a plan for this particular episode, and this is called Changing Things on the Fly. We got a huge gift. Actually, it was just this morning. We were made aware.
Literally a couple of hours before we sat down to record this episode. Mm-hmm. And it's from Fox News. We have a little gift from Fox News.
They do a series called The Big Idea.
Mm-hmm.
And The Big Idea, I'm just reading what it says, is a series that asks top lawmakers and figures to discuss their moonshot. What's the one proposal, if politics and polls and even the price tag were not an issue, what one proposal would you implement? In other words, here's a magic wand, wave it, what would you like to have? And Stephan Moore, who is a member of President Trump's Economic Recovery Task Force and economist at FreedomWorks, had a bold idea on how to reinvigorate the economy, abolish the federal income tax, and replace it with a national sales tax. Think about that.
Holy cow. What an idea. Why didn't we think of that?
Somebody on President Trump, we've been talking and talking and talking. How do we get the fair tax in front of President Trump? Now, we got to be 100% upfront and honest here. Stephen Moore is not proposing the fair tax by name.
No.
He's just proposing this. This is more conceptual, not quite as specific. But he's saying, what would it do? What would you do? And Stephen Moore, one of President Trump's economic advisors, said, I'd replace the income tax with a national sales tax.
By the way, we need to thank Randy Fisher, who found this article this morning. He must have an alert set up because this literally came on just a couple of hours before we started this recording session. And we decided this is too big a deal. We have to concentrate on this.
Yeah, so on the face of it, so we're kind of quoting from this article here from Fox News. On the face of it, it may seem like a radical notion, especially since essentially all Americans nowadays have grown up having a chunk of their income pulled out by the IRS every year. But Moore notes that the income tax is a relatively new invention to the United States, having been introduced in the early 20th century. So that's 1913 was actually when it came in. So it's been around for 107 years, and that's less than half of the lifetime of the country at this point.
That's right. And our country did very well without it. All right. Mm-hmm. Went from being a fledgling company to one of the strongest countries in the world.
Now, he did note that there are some states that want to do that. If there are states, Florida, of course, here is one of them, Tennessee, Texas, that do that. They fund their economy with a sales tax and some other things as well.
Yeah, because he says
no income tax.
On the state level, having a sales tax and no income tax is hardly novel. A number of states having exactly this setup, and he goes on to mention it in another part of it that I didn't mark off here, but I do have that. Well, it's the same thing that we've talked about. In fact, he mentions how there's 9 states that do not have an income tax. They exist pretty much totally by sales tax. And he mentions how their economies are so much stronger than the states that have an income tax. Mm-hmm. Bob and I have been saying that for years, literally years now. Yeah. I'm not sure who we're going to give credit, but Steve Moore has been doing this longer than you and I have.
He has, but it was interesting to see him use the exact same phrase that we've used here on Fair Tax Power Radio.
Yeah.
The folks asked him, so you want to scrap the income tax in favor of a national sales tax? What would be the advantages of such a move? And he answers, well, can you imagine the United States without the burden of an income tax? Here it is. It would be rocket fuel for the U.S. economy.
That's right. Yeah. Because just think of countries that are international companies. They're looking for a place to set up their next big plant and so forth. Suddenly, the United States has no corporate tax. Mm-hmm. What do you think they're going to do?
He continues, imagine how much we would grow and how prosperous we would be if we started taxing people on what they take out of the economy, which is what they consume, rather than what they put into the economy, which is their work, their thrift, their productivity, and their entrepreneurship.
Yeah, and I like that phrase right there, because that really expresses it. Why tax people on their hard work and ingenuity and productivity?
Well, it's just axiomatic. If you tax something, you get less of it.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happens.
So if you get less thrift, less productivity, less entrepreneurship if it's taxed, especially to the degree that some people that they're wanting to do it these days.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Okay.
All right.
What else did you find interesting in there?
He says, at a time when America is spending trillions of dollars on economic stimulus and there are calls for higher taxes to pay for that stimulus, what do you say to those who say that scrapping the tax seems counterintuitive? Counterintuitive. Well, we're going to spend all this money, but we're going to get rid of the tax, and that's something else that people have a lot of misconceptions with. The fair tax, and what even though Moore's not talking about the fair tax specifically, he's talking in more general terms. He's talking about replacing the income tax.
Yeah.
So you're going to get rid of a tax. Excuse me again.
Yeah,
you're going to replace it with something else.
Yeah, and we've mentioned that for years here on Fair Tax Power Radio. The fair tax replaces the income tax. The income tax goes away. The fair tax comes in. It taxes people, people still pay taxes, but at a different part of their livelihood. And again, instead of taxing them on how hard they work, we tax them on what they choose to spend. And there's a couple of very important things in there about that.
His response to that question, I'm replacing the corporate tax, the personal income tax, the capital gains tax, the estate tax, the dividend tax. Think about that. There'd be no tax on any of those things. And you just pay your tax at the cash register like you do in the States. Go to the 7-Eleven, go to Walmart.
Now, there's a couple of things.
We should get rid of this tickle in my throat.
Take a drink there. There's a couple of things in this article. We encourage you to look this up. I mean, it was published this morning. We're recording this on July 24th, and it literally came across the computer as I was prepping for today's show. And then so we took all that prep and threw it out the window and decided to go with this.
This is a huge point. First of all, the most important thing is to get that budget balanced. We cannot continue to spend more than we take in.
And the states that have a sales tax and no income tax.
And he says the way you do that is you get the economy growing at a really rapid pace.
There you go.
You just don't continue to tax the snot out of incomes. You grow the economy. You pour rocket fuel on the economy, strike a match, and watch it take off.
And he mentions Florida and Texas, as examples of two states that are very successful economically because they don't have an income tax.
Mm-hmm.
So
another huge advantage of this is that you would not have to have an IRS. We've been hitting on this. The flat tax, as some people propose, will not get rid of the IRS. It's still a tax on income. Think about it. You would not have the government knowing how much money you make, what your personal finances look like, what your business ownership looks like. You wouldn't have the IRS snooping into your financial records. You wouldn't have April 15th. Well, April 15th would still exist, but it would just be another lovely spring day. And some other things he doesn't mention. You would no longer have the IRS with the ability to come in and freeze your assets and take your bank account without even accusing you of doing anything wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
administratively clean, it's economically smart, and it protects our liberties. This is a really good. This guy must be really smart.
Yeah. Now, you'll find when you read the article, and we encourage you to go find it on Fox News website, the big idea. Okay, and it also, this is authored by Adam Shaw. So maybe that'll help you find it, okay?
One more thing I want to quote from this article.
Yeah.
By the way, the people who would benefit most, and this is President Trump's economic advisor talking, people who would benefit most would be lower income Americans because there would be more jobs, more opportunities. You could have something called a rebate. So he's at least thinking about what the fair tax prebate is all about.
Yep.
So
the family consumption allowance.
He's saying give every American a card so your first $20,000 of purchases during a year will be tax-free. That's similar. The prebate, of course, is based on household poverty level for household size.
Yeah.
And then again, it's not a card where they don't charge the tax on the purchase. Again, that idea where you've got, I've got a card here that exempts me from paying the tax at all. I can see people selling those things and counterfeiting those things. It's just a whole lot easier, a lot cleaner. We'll explain this to him, just to collect the tax, but then rebate it back to them up to a certain level.
Right.
So you can't cheat on that. That's fraud proof.
Most of the concepts of the fair tax are in this plan, but I'll tell you where the differences are. He talks, instead of a 23%, he talks about a 17%. Well, I found out from Steve Hayes, and the emails were just flying back and forth amongst the fair tax leaders. And Steve has the history on this. He worked with Stephen Moore doing presentations back in '92, and when a congressman by the name of Billy Tozen from Louisiana was setting up debates between him and Dick Armey. Billy Tozen was in favor of a consumption tax, Dick Armey a flat tax, and they used to have these debates as far back as '92. That's before the fair tax was born. But the difference is that in that plan they kept the payroll tax. Okay, with the fair tax, the payroll tax is gone because it is the most regressive tax there is, which means it hurts the poor.
Explain to people what the payroll tax is.
Oh, I think everybody knows that. If you ever got a paycheck from anybody, what the payroll
never
tax
assume that everybody knows exactly what you're talking about. We're talking about the taxes that come out of your paycheck that fund Social Security and Medicare.
Yep, they used to call it FICA. All right?
I think they still do.
Yeah, Social Security and Medicare and so forth, they will still be supported. Those programs will still be supported under the fair tax, but it won't be coming out of your paycheck. It'll be part of the fair tax. Part of the proceeds from the fair tax must go to Social Security and Medicare. So it'll be even because everybody who makes a purchase in this country will be contributing to Social Security and Medicare. That's a much more fair system than what we have now.
Yeah, including the ones that are making their incomes from crime and panhandling.
Yeah, exactly. The evaders, the evaders are not helping us at all. But those people who are evading now will become taxpayers under the fair tax because they have to go to the store and buy stuff, all right? So... Anyway,
so again, this is Stephen Morse. I have no doubt that if we did not have the encumbrance of an income tax, we'd see very, very rapidly growing economy. And when people earn more and spend more, they pay more tax. It's a really smart way to do it. Now we just got to convince him you've got the right concept. Let's give him the specific proposal to get that done, and that would be the fair tax.
Yeah. And this is a big deal for the fair tax movement. I was talking to somebody this morning. How's that fair tax thing going? I said, well, we're kind of, we're plugging along, but suddenly an hour later we had this shot in the arm here because it is an economic advisor of President Trump who's talking about this on a national media. Yes. That's a big deal.
That is a big deal. We've got to focus that down from just the concept of a national sales tax to let's make this the fair tax. We've got about 2.5 minutes left to go here.
Yeah.
So let's tell folks what they can do to help make this happen.
Okay.
Our official call to action.
Yes, which is in here somewhere.
Get into your stack of stuff.
Okay. The first thing is what I already mentioned is join AFFT. Go to fairtax.org and subscribe or join, whatever you want to call it, okay? Get on board with them because they do have monthly expenses, and one of the monthly expenses we just talked about, they provide insurance for people that set up information booths, okay? Will cost you nothing, okay? So join AFFT. There's a call to action page on fairtax.org. You can get involved and go down to call to action and see what is the flavor of the week, okay? I mentioned last week, download the free Fair Tax Power Radio app. Okay, we have a free app, and you can get it for both the iPhone or the iOS devices or Android. All right, it's there for both. It'll cost you nothing. It's the best way to keep up with our podcasts. Okay, and somebody emailed back to us and said, "I didn't know about that app. Thank you." So it was good.
It is.
Okay.
Well, get on your Congress critters.
Yeah.
You can send them letters and emails if you like to, but we would suggest the good old-fashioned phone call.
Yep.
They could ignore a letter, they could ignore an email, or they can just send you back a little boilerplate, thank you for your input, I'll keep it in mind kind of thing. But if you're talking to someone specifically on the phone, asking them, does this representative, support the fair tax or not? If not, why not? And just be persistent, be polite, but stay on them.
And I would say, in light of this article today, we can contact the president at whitehouse.gov/contact.
Yes.
And thank the president for sending Stephen Moore out to talk about the consumption tax.
Dear Mr. President, listen to what Stephen Moore has to say and take what he says, and let's do it with a fair tax. That's
okay.
25.
There's one last thing I got to get in here.
Real quick.
Use Facebook or whatever and thank the radio stations that are airing our show. WTOB in Winston-Salem. WAME in Statesville, North Carolina, and WLSC in Laura, South Carolina. Get on their Facebook page and thank them.
All righty, we're a tick over here, so we got to wrap this up. Thank you again for listening and watching Fair Tax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
The Fair Tax guys reminding you again that the fair tax is the only truly fair tax, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
The fair tax is a tax replacement plan where we take all the federal income taxes, including corporate, personal, gift, and estate taxes, and replace them with one national consumption tax on new purchases above the poverty level only. This form of consumption tax comes with no exceptions and is progressive, not regressive. The poor are not paying more, and the rich are not paying less. What makes it progressive is that all Americans are untaxed up to the poverty level via the prebate, much like your standard tax deduction. The taxes are collected by retail businesses at state level, so the system is more accountable. The IRS is done away with, and you have control over your money and what the overall tax rate your household pays. The fair tax is revenue neutral, so the government receives the same amount of money as they do now, and it's fair because you decide what's fair, not them. To learn more, visit fairtax.org and be sure to like us on social media to help educate your friends and spread the word.